Good evening and welcome to another edition of The Experience. I'm your host, Steve Fox, and we have a wonderful, intriguing show for you tonight. The authors of a book entitled Deliver Us from Evil are in the studio with me, and basically they're going to talk about their experiences while chronicling one of the probably the most intriguing stories, I think, in Massachusetts history. It happened 100 years ago. Almost, in January it would have been 100 years ago, the 100-year anniversary, regarding the Prouty Hammond love story or murders, coincidences or cover-ups. The information you're going to hear tonight is intriguing, probably will cause many questions to form in your head, and we're going to invite you to make those calls to us. We are broadcasting live, and the number, if you have one, is 343-3130. We are going to ask that you wait towards the last 20 minutes of the program. However, if you just can't wait, we are going to be answering our phones, and we'll write down your name and number and your question, and we'll get back to you when we're ready to take calls. So you can feel free to do that as well. If you'd like to reach us by email, you can do that as well by emailing us at fatv.org, or you can visit us on the web at www.fatv.org/experience. Right now, I would like to introduce my guests. To my left is Linda and Dave Boutillette. Boutillette. And on my right is Marilyn and Randy Burdett.
Yes.
I'm going to start with, I'll start with you, Marilyn,
Okay.
since basically the story kind of begins on your side. What happened?
When I read the clippings that my brother had found, I got very intrigued with it. And I just couldn't stop thinking about it. It kind of haunted me. And I wanted to know what really happened because it didn't make any sense to me at all that these were so-called suicides. And so I went down and spoke with Linda and asked her, let's do this. We're not doing anything in our spare time. Let's see if we can research this.
Now, the clippings that you're talking about, these were just regular newspaper clippings?
Yes, that my brother had found, and they were cleaning out an attic in one of the Prouty mansions in Spencer. And of course, there are lots of Prouty mansions in Spencer. There's a lot of Prouties in
What's
Spencer.
the significance? I guess both the Prouty and Hammond were very big names in the Spencer
Yes.
area. What was like the background or their significance to Spencer itself?
Well, we have David Prouty High School. Everything is really Prouty. There are lots of Prouties there still today.
Were they?
They were founders of the town. I mean, they were pioneers in the town.
Back in the
Prouty Booth Company. I mean, there was a lot of Prouties, and they controlled a lot of the industry in the town.
Okay.
The significance, as far as the book goes, the Prouties and the Hammonds were two of the wealthiest families in Spencer at the turn of the century. Okay, and in the 1800s. That's why this story needed to be told.
Okay. Now, since for those who are not aware of Spencer and the Prouty and Hammond family, set the stage. Who were they, and what was the event that was happening in January of 1899?
Iris Prouty was to marry young Henry Hammond, and they both came from very wealthy families. The Hammonds were quite wealthy compared to William Prouty's family. There were other Prouty families that were much more well-off than William, but him and his brother owned their own boot company, which was a small boot company, not like the big Prouty boot company at the time.
Okay.
So it was supposed to be the biggest wedding ever in Spencer, actually.
The two biggest families in
Yes.
Spencer.
Uniting.
Yep.
And but something happened prior to the wedding, and what was that?
And Henry Hammond, they say, committed suicide.
By a gunshot wound.
Wound to the center of his forehead.
With a 38 forehands in Wadsworth.
No, 32.
32, excuse me.
Which disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It was not at the scene where he was murdered.
Well, according to the articles, it was, and
But
then it wasn't.
Right.
Which we'll get to. Somehow, it found its way to another death.
Yes.
A little later down the line.
Yes.
And then after that, it disappeared.
Again.
And later was found in your father's bathroom wall.
That's right.
Now, your father found this. Now it's now 90 years later, 1970.
That's right.
He's remodeling his bedroom,
bathroom, correct.
and inside a wall is this.
At that time, the house had the old horsehair plastered walls. And he was knocking this all out, taking all the slats to remove it, to put up sheetrock and skim coat the wall. In doing so, when they started taking the top of the wall out, he noticed that there was something that was blocking the entryway down through the wall. Mm-hmm. So he reached down and pulled out what he thought was a wad of old newspaper. And he tells me, Randy and I were both in Vietnam at the time. I found out about it when I got home. He told me that he just picked up the newspaper and he put it on, I guess, the side of the tub or the counter or whatnot, and he just kind of went through it to look at the ads and so on and so forth, how much things cost back then. You know, everybody knows that you have to look. And as he opened it up, he saw this gun. Being inquisitive, he looked at the gun, he opened it up, and he noticed that there were 4 live rounds in the revolver, but there were 2 spent shells. And I guess the first person he talked to about it was Marilyn's dad. They were next-door neighbors.
So you basically almost grew up.
We grew up together.
Yeah,
sure. Right next door to each other.
Did you remember your father ever talking to you about this, or was this story passed on?
No, it wasn't. But actually, what happened was when I went back to and asked my mother about it, she said, "Oh yeah," she said, Claire, which was David's mother, and I was going through those newspapers to see how cheap things were back in 1899 compared to the present time. So I said, "You remember the year?" She said, "Yeah, the newspaper was from 1899." And I said, "Okay, well, what did they do with the newspaper?" "Well, we threw it away after. What would you keep an old newspaper like that for?"
Wow. Right, so you have the gun, and we actually have the gun here.
Yes.
Let's take that out.
Okay.
And show